This is the Ace Pro 2, an 8K capable action cam from Insta360, co-engineered by Leica, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts having used this camera for the last 6 months. Hi, my name is Steve, and if you are new here, this is my channel Run SDJ, a channel predominantly about capturing my running adventures from race blogs to equipment reviews and everything in between. This video is completely unsponsored. I bought the Ace Pro 2 with my own money, secondhand, for about £275 in the UK with a load of accessories back in April 2025, so you can expect a completely unbiased review from here on out. This review will mainly focus on features of the Ace Pro 2 I actually use day to day as a running vlogger, but I have tried out a couple of the other features which I'll talk about towards the end of the review. I'll mainly be focusing on free frame, slow motion, pure and normal video modes, as well as some limited experience using it as a stills camera, which have been my typical use cases for the Ace Pro 2. So let's get into it. Firstly, why did I buy the Insta360 Ace Pro 2? If you've seen my video on the Insta360 Go 3S, you'll note that I absolutely love that camera. It is totally capable of most things that I've thrown at it, including being the sole camera I used during the Chicago Marathon in 2024, so go and watch that vlog to see what the camera is capable of. Using a camera the size of your thumb has loads of advantages, but also a few drawbacks, namely battery life, its performance in low light, and its capability of shooting at high frame rates in 4K. You can work around the short battery life using the dock or this recently released excellent small form factor battery pack, which attaches like that. That doesn't suddenly make it a better performer in low light or give it the capability to shoot in 4K 120 frames per second, which I'm looking for things like product reviews and running in the darker winter and autumn months. So having really enjoyed the overall experience of the Go 3S, including the UI and the phone and the Mac apps, I wanted to stay in the Insta360 ecosystem, and the Ace Pro 2 seemed like a really good option to complement my setup. But just for clarity, the Ace Pro 2 will not be replacing my Go 3S. I will still be using that as much as ever, but this gives me just a bit of extra flexibility in the videos that I make. And while the just announced or just to be announced Go Ultra might now go to 4K 60 frames per second, I don't think that will be enough at this stage for me to replace the Go 3S. So let's start with a few specs of the Ace Pro 2. In standard video mode, the Ace Pro 2 will shoot in up to 8K 30 frames per second. It will do 4K in up to 120 frames per second, or in 1080p at 240 frames per second. In free frame or pure video modes, the Ace Pro 2 maxes out at 4K 60 frames per second. It has a 1/1.3 inch sensor and lens co-engineered by Leica with an equivalent 35mm focal range of 13mm, so it is super wide and has an aperture of f2.6. As well as video, it will shoot RAW format photos in up to 50 megapixels. The Ace Pro 2 is waterproof down to 12 meters without a case. It uses micro SD for storage. It doesn't have any built-in storage, and it has a USB-C 3.0 port for charging and connectivity. It will also connect to a limited number of devices via Bluetooth, such as certain headsets. Unlike the Go 3S, it uses removable batteries, which are available as either 1650 or 1800 milliamp hours. Insta360 claim 3 hours of battery life in 25 degrees C lab environment, shooting in 1080p 24 frames per second with active HDR off and endurance mode turned on. Mimicking these settings myself, albeit not in a lab and around 28 degrees, the Ace Pro 2 lasted for about 160 minutes, 20 minutes shy of what Insta360 says, before it turned off due to low battery. Using more typical settings that I would actually use, The 1800 milliamp hour battery lasted 62 minutes of continual shooting in video mode at 4K 60 frames per second with standard stabilization and active HDR turned on, shooting in a 16:9 aspect ratio. This was once again indoors in temperatures of around 28 degrees C. The camera actually overheated and turned itself off. The camera did indeed get really quite hot during this test, especially on the metal lens ring and on the base on the magnetic mounting area. I am personally unlikely to be using it for that long continual shooting, but it is something worth bearing in mind. When I turned the camera back on, the 1800 milliamp hour battery had about 13% left. If that hasn't covered what you were looking for specs-wise, you can find the full spec list on the Insta360 website. So let's get going about how I use the camera and my thoughts. But before I do, can I just ask if you are enjoying this video, finding it useful, and you are not subscribed to my channel, if you could think about hitting that subscribe button. Last month, 96% of people watching my videos still weren't subscribers. This channel has grown a lot so far this year, and I'd love to continue building a community here on YouTube, so it would mean a lot if you join me by subscribing. And now, back to the review. My primary use case for the Ace Pro 2 is as a vlogging camera during runs or races. So in these scenarios, I am pointing the camera at myself, like so, and delivering verbal updates to camera. In this scenario, I am looking for stable footage of myself with good quality audio that can pick out my voice from the surrounding atmosphere and ideally through windy conditions if necessary. I'm ideally looking for the video quality to be well balanced without it feeling blown out in scenarios like bright sunny days. Generally, in this situation, I use free frame mode, which essentially shoots in 4:3 resolution, but then gives me the flexibility to be able to use the footage for both 16:9 horizontal long form videos that I use here on YouTube, or vertical edits for shorts for use on things like YouTube Shorts and also Instagram. In this short clip in Lanzarote, you can hear two different audio modes from the camera's internal mic, called close mode and voice focus in the Insta360 Studio Mac app, so you can hear the different modes and how it dealt with quite high winds. So this is 4K 60 free frame mode using the camera's internal mic. I'm about to be on the Atlantic coast. I can hear the wind, so a bad microphone, let's see if this is one, should probably be picking up quite a lot of wind noise right now. But if this is a good microphone, as it is promised to be, it should be getting rid of that wind and you should be able to hear me pretty clearly. So let's see how this works out. In this next clip, you can see how the camera deals with race day atmosphere when I'm trying to record a piece to camera. This was done in close mode. 15K, that was a 23:12. Right now, this is the most consistent race I think I've ever done. I've been following paces since the 5K point. So I'm keeping my own pace, so I'm really pleased with how it's going. So far, I'm about 90 seconds ahead of that 1 hour 40 goal. Overall, I'm really happy with the performance of the Ace Pro 2 in these scenarios. It does a good job of dealing with strong sun, shooting directly into the sun in the first clip, but also in more overcast conditions in the second clip. I think the audio in these clips is perfectly fine for my general use case, dealing well with the winds in Lanzarote and the race day atmosphere in London using the internal mics on the Ace Pro 2 while still being able to hear my voice as the focus. However, one of the advantages of the Insta360 Ace Pro 2 is that you can actually attach an external microphone to it via the USB-C port. So what you're hearing now, it is quite windy, there's quite a crosswind coming from that direction. So I have the USB-C dongle from the Hollyland Lark M2S And the audio you're hearing will be from that microphone, which hopefully you can see there. I am wearing the dead cat, as they call it, which is the thing that hopefully will get rid of a lot of this wind noise and make the audio while I'm running, though it sounds very loud, the wind in my ears. Hopefully you're getting pretty crystal clear audio. So yeah, the wind has dropped a bit now, but yeah, this is one of the big benefits of this over some other action cams, is that literally plug and play, little tiny USB dongle, doesn't take up much space at all. So yeah, big advantage hopefully of the Ace Pro 2. In that clip, you can't hear any wind whatsoever, so being able to connect an external wireless mic is a really great bonus feature here of the Insta360 Ace Pro 2 if you really need to take audio to the next level. Insta360 have recently released the Mic Air, which is an external button style mic, which does have the advantage of not needing to plug a USB-C receiver into the Ace Pro 2, which further refines this feature. In terms of using this camera for filming B-roll, the Ace Pro 2 is also a strong performer. Generally, I would use my Go 3S for this type of footage in daylight conditions, but if for whatever reason I needed to take advantage of the larger sensor or higher resolution and or frame rate, I'll definitely be reaching for the Ace Pro 2. The camera has a dedicated slow motion mode. Here you can shoot up to 4K 120 frames per second, but there is a downside of this mode. In this mode, it actually records a 30 frames per second clip just at a quarter speed rather than outputting a 120 frames per second clip. Also, in my experience, it records at a much lower bit rate in this mode. If you want the flexibility of having an actual 4K 120 frames per second shot with all the frames recorded to be able to do more in post-processing, use the standard video mode and set the resolution and frame rate that way for far more flexibility and a higher bit rate. Low light is also an area where the Ace Pro 2 would be the camera I would reach for over the Go 3S. It has a mode called Pure Video, which is pretty good in quite dark conditions. You can shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second in this mode and still use stabilization to help you keep your footage smooth. In all honesty, I think I was pushing the low light to the limit here in Lanzarote, with sometimes very little actual light when I moved away from the street lights, but it definitely performed better than I had experienced on my GoPro Hero 9. Outside of how I would typically use this camera, I was keen to see how it performed with me as a spectator rather than as a participant at an event. My wife has recently started doing some triathlons, so I took the Ace Pro 2 along to one of her races recently to see how it performed. These were all shot in 4K 120 frames per second in standard video mode, giving me a bit more flexibility over the footage. These aren't the most cinematic of shots, as it's definitely not my forte, but it was good to try out the camera in different scenario. Onto a feature I'll probably use sparingly, but certainly not every day, and that is photo mode. Now, initially, I just used the camera as it comes, but part of the accessories I got when I bought the camera was this small rig cage. To that, I bought a grip kit with a shutter button from a brand called A Magazine, I think, from AliExpress for £14, which connects like that. Official kits, including the cage, grip, and shutter, are available from Insta360, costing about £85 in the UK. But as I didn't know how much I'd actually use this, I just bought a cheap version, but it does make a much nicer form factor to use as a point and shoot camera. As mentioned, this camera will shoot in up to 50 megapixel RAW format in a 4:3 aspect ratio, 37 megapixels in 16:9, and you can bin those down to 12.5 megapixels if you don't need all that resolution. You can also shoot in just JPEG mode or pure shot, which is Insta360's algorithmic processing, similar to how a smartphone post-processes your photos. I'm not a particularly great photographer, so don't come at me in the comments, but I just wanted to show some of the capabilities of the camera. There are some great videos online that showcase the photo mode much better than I can. However, I think with the Leica lens, the quality of the photos is actually pretty good with the Ace Pro 2. I think the pure shot processing tends to lighten the photos a bit too much for my tastes, so having the option to shoot in RAW and have more control playing around with the photos is a really good thing to have. I think in scenarios like street photography, where you aren't necessarily trying to capture blink and you miss it photos, the Ace Pro 2 would work pretty well. But as soon as you try to capture something fast, the camera mode falls apart a little bit. There is a lot of lag between pressing the shutter and then being ready to go again. You can shoot in burst mode, but you lose a lot of flexibility over image quality, and shooting in RAW isn't an option in that mode. Another feature of the Ace Pro 2 is as a webcam, but I really don't think that Insta360 has optimized the camera for this type of use. I'd say it actually performs pretty badly in this scenario, which is a shame because with that sensor and lens, it's definitely got the capability of being much better. This camera also doesn't have a mini HDMI out, which is a shame because that was a nice feature of my older GoPro that I definitely used on occasion. With this quality of lens and sensor, there is definitely more this camera would be capable of doing outside of just being an action cam. So what are my overall thoughts about the Insta360 Ace Pro 2? I'd say for my use case of it being a vlogging action camera, it can handle most of the things I'm going to be throwing at it with excellent results. The flexibility to be able to record audio with wireless external mics is also a massive feature for me. As we enter the darker months, I think the Ace Pro 2 performance in lower light will come into its own during my early morning or later evening runs, where the Go 3S struggled a bit last year. Taking time to learn the pros and the cons of using the different mode I think has been important to me, like the difference between shooting in slow motion mode and just using higher frame rates in normal video modes. The other features, such as its quality as a stills camera, are a nice bonus feature. The lack of HDMI out or it being a good quality webcam, it's definitely not a deal breaker, but it would be a nice to have kind of thing. So hopefully this video has given you an honest view of this camera from my point of view as a running vlogger. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Remember to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.